Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is The Brady Bunch, issue number 1, dated February 1969. And this comic is obviously based on the classic sitcom. If you're listening to this, you know what The Brady Bunch is. It's a show that I do remember watching in first run. I think probably the last 2 seasons. I remember it was the Brady Bunch, then the Partridge Family, who who had that obnoxious little kid at the end, and then Room 222. And it's a show I watched a lot. Eventually, in the late 1970s, I stopped watching it less and less. And I actually went through a large period of just never watching the show. So I had actually watched half of the first season for the first time in like 45 years. And I'll be giving my thoughts on at least the first half of the season, up until that horrible episode with the measles. So anyway, I'm going to take a look at the cover. Not much to say about the cover. Not much to say about this comic book. These are 4 terrible stories. It's a publicity shot of the Brady Bunch here. The show probably was not officially picked up. Well, it was picked up, but they took a little bit of a gamble of a comic adaptation of this. But yeah, thankfully there were only 2 of these adaptations. As I mentioned, these are 4 terrible stories. So I'm going to get into the comic. And the splash page is the first story, Sunday Fun Day. And we see atypical behavior from the Brady kids here as they're having a pillow fight, basically, and just acting up in their parents' bedroom. The Brady kids never acted this way. And the one thing I do have to say about the creative team, such as it is, because the art isn't that great either, is that these are probably overseas artists who did not watch the show. That was often the case with a lot of these TV adaptations. For example, from TV to comics. For example, the Star Trek comics. I think those were from Gold Key. The artists who worked on those books, they were from Italy. And I think also the writing came from there. And they did not watch these shows that they were adapting to comic books. So the art isn't that great in terms of the effects, how they look compared to the real life characters, but they probably only had a handful of publicity shots to work from. And it was the same thing with Star Trek and those Italian artists. They were just given a few pictures and say, draw this, and come up with something. So that's why the adaptations were never really true. So anyway, this is atypical behavior from the Brady kids as they wake up their mom and dad. Gonna turn the page. Mike, he's trying to restore some peace. Peter comes over and just whacks him in the head with a pillow. Definitely atypical behavior from Peter or any of the Bradys. They would never do something like this. Mike is then laying down the law. He's getting really angry here, and he's putting his foot down that you guys need to leave. The kids kind of like are a little frightened off because they don't want their dad mad at them. And I don't think Mike Brady was ever mad at his kids. I think he was disappointed at times. But I don't remember him having... But the thing is, in the TV show, he wouldn't have to do this. The TV Bradys would not be misbehaving this way. The kids, they kind of like walk out of the room with their tails tucked under their legs. And Mike is trying to get back to sleep. Carol's saying, oh, come on, it's not that big a deal. I'm going to turn the page. So the kids are overhearing this, saying, Mike is being a bit chauvinistic, which he never was in the show, where he's saying, a man's home is his castle, but he's trying to say a man's bedroom is his castle, and Carol's wondering why are you saying that? Just the bedroom and not the house. And Mike's saying, listen, I've already conceded the rest of the house to the kids. I can't control those little brats, the ones that I spawned and the ones that you spawned. So at least this one little area in the bedroom I do have control over. So I heard, from what I understand, Robert Reed hated those scenes because he was uncomfortable with the whole thing, and it didn't take Florence Henderson that much time to realize why. And that later came out when he sadly had passed. So anyway, the kids are listening to this, and they're thinking to themselves, "Hey, we should do something nice." But that's what they come to. But first, they're talking about how Greg and the boys are saying, "We've never seen Dad that mad before." Marcia is showing some concern, saying that, "Hold it, he's kind of a jerk now, and you're telling me you knew he was a jerk in the past." So Marcia has to figure out, hold it, which dad am I going to get? And I guess it's one thing that holds true, because it's like the blended family, which is one of the reasons why the show was so popular. It was kind of like that first time where you had a non-nuclear family, focused on. So anyway, the kids, they're trying to think what nice gesture can they do for their dad. Greg is drawn. He looks kind of like Alfred E. Newman, and they come up with the idea of they're going to do something special for them next Sunday. So they know that, okay, they ruined this Sunday morning, but the next Sunday morning we're gonna make it really nice for him. Gonna turn the page. So they decide on having breakfast in bed, and that was actually a big deal at one time, at least in the world of television, because having breakfast in bed was kind of like considered this like real luxury. And that trope went on, and so that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna make their parents breakfast, and they're gonna have it, and they can have it in bed, and they'll just deeply appreciate that that gesture. I guess honestly it probably wouldn't be a big deal to me, but I can understand how others would feel. So the thing is, Greg is organizing the other kids. That rang true. Greg was always the leader of the kids. He would sometimes co-share with Marcia, and Marcia had her own authority over the girls. But yeah, it was always Greg who was kind of the leader, and he's going to delegate, who's going to be doing what. Going to turn the page. So anyway, it's Sunday. One of the things they want to have done is they want Dad to have, the newspaper. Bobby goes out for the newspaper. We see a non-tiger looking dog. I don't know whether this belonged to a neighbor, or maybe they were told there was a dog in the show, but they didn't know what the dog looked like, which is possible. And they just drew this dog. But nevertheless, another thing that rings true is that Bobby doesn't know too much about this dog, which rang true for the show. People who have watched the show have noticed that Tiger and those kids had no chemistry. The kids didn't really want to interact with Tiger, and Tiger did not want to interact with them. And the Bradys were terrible dog owners. In terms of like, I'm sure in terms of like taking him to the vet and feeding him, they're great. But Tiger's just must be beside himself. Why am I stuck with these losers? Maybe he threw himself in front of that truck. That's what happened to the first one. The second Tiger actually became a movie star in A Boy and His Dog, which is a great movie. So anyway, the dog is making a mess of Bobby here. Bobby, lets go of the paper. It flies all over the place. The sprinklers are on also, so presumably it's getting wet also. So, but Bobby's complaining that hey, they shouldn't have sent a little kid like me out to do this job. That rang true for me as when I was a little kid. My mom would give me jobs that really an adult should have been doing, and I was at 7 years old doing it. And when I screwed up, I was always like, "What were you expecting? I'm a little kid." So Bobby was going through what I'm going through. We go to the kitchen. The girls, Marcia and Jan, they're talking about what to cook. Marcia has a specialty, and she's going to cook stewed tomatoes, which, oh, I would not want something like that for breakfast. But the thing is, it's a strength for Marcia because it's really the only thing she can cook fairly well. So Marcia's kind of like ego protection. They're going to take the best that I have on my terms. Bobby thinks this is a terrible idea, but Cindy corrects him, saying, "Listen, it's either that or cold cereal," and she might not even get that right. Gonna turn the page. So anyway, Peter looks like he's trying to make coffee, but he basically uses the entire can. And again, this is incompetency that you did not see from the Bradys. The Bradys were pretty competent in anything they did, so this doesn't ring true. Bobby comes into the kitchen. He brings in that wet, messed up newspaper. It's dripping all over the place. Marcia is annoyed with him. This kind of rings true because Marcia's a little dismissive of Bobby here. Cindy is trying to help out. She's putting a potato into a blender to try to make potato juice. Again, this sort of rang true in that Sherwood Schwartz wanted Cindy to be kind of like that really super corny type humor that Susan Olsen hated, because Susan Olsen hated the way she was written. Even at that age, she was like, "I know better than this," but they were like, "We need you to be this really dumb girl." And this is exactly what she is characterized here. But Greg is aghast by the idea of potato juice. Gonna turn the page. Marcia and Greg are talking. Here, Marcia is continuing to make what she's planning on making. Greg's kind of skeptical of Marcia's cooking. Then he has a right to be this way because it turns out Marcia is sort of making this glue-like mess. So it's less stewed tomatoes and more like glued tomatoes. See the kitchen. The kitchen is a disaster. They're trying to deal with the burnt toast, but nevertheless they persist, and they continue to hey, we're gonna load up this tray and we're gonna serve this to our dad. Gonna turn the page. We see the kids. They line up in front of their parents' bedroom. Marcia is the one who makes the knock. Greg is the one holding the tray. And the rest of the kids, they're just hanging around, just kind of in anticipation. So Mike and Carol, they're in the bedroom here. I don't remember. There's a recliner here that Carol's sitting in, which I don't remember ever seeing in the TV show. The kids come in. They present the breakfast to their dad. He's in bed. Say, when you taste this, you can tell it was done with love. Mike is horrified by what he's been fed here. And then the following Sunday, Mike takes the entire family to, I guess, the International House of Pancakes. And Mike is saying, this we'll do it this way because even though it costs me more money, it will give me fewer headaches. And that's the end of this first story. The next story is TV or not TV. This is the kids fighting over the television. We see basically the 6 kids want to see different things at the moment. We see an Alice-like character here. She's in yellow, not blue, and she also kind of has these kind of like school teacher glasses. Again, when those Italian artists were given those photos, those publicity shots, I'm thinking that maybe none of them had Alice in it. And because of that, they kind of had to kind of guess on what the Alice character would look like. But we see here she's a bit annoyed with the kids. And on the TV show, it took a lot to get her to be like, hey, hey, hey. Gonna turn the page. Alice restores order. The kids listen to this. Alice is dictating to the kids that, listen, I didn't sign up for this, remember when your dad, and I'm looking at you, Greg, and Peter and Bobby, it was 3 kids. Now I have to take care of 6 kids, and I'm really kind of like running low on patience here. So basically, Alice is going to decide what's going to be on TV. Going to turn the page. The kids here, they protest that, and Alice kind of she takes charge of what was originally a false promise, and this is basically the solution she wanted, was to take over the TV. She is watching soap operas. The other kids, they have no interest in that, so they go outside to mope. We see Mike Brady. He comes home. He's noticing the kids are moping, and he's kind of saying, "Hey, what's going on here?" Going to turn the page. The kids, they start whining about the TV shows they want to watch, and Mike doesn't want to hear this nonsense. He doesn't care about this, and he yells at the kids to be quiet. Then suddenly Carol comes in. Looks like she went grocery shopping. She has groceries. She overhears this. She's saying, excuse me, you were yelling at the kids. You yell at your spawn. You don't yell at my spawn. So Carol does not like Mike yelling at the kids. Mike's a little bit henpecked here. He kind of apologizes. I'm going to turn the page. Then Carol, she's kind of like just saying, hey, listen, be mindful. If you have to, quote, discipline my girls, you go through me first. Mike is kind of understanding that. Then Alice is explaining what's going on with the TV. I think Carol wants a second TV. And Mike doesn't want to do that because he doesn't feel he makes enough money to buy another TV, which sort of rang true because TVs at that time were pretty pricey. So it was not like a light investment here, and Carol and Mike, they're arguing over this because she wants the second TV. Gonna turn the page. So then what happens is that Carol gets the other kids and Alice together. And she's basically saying, listen, we have to trick your father into believing we need a second TV. So we're kind of like scheming with him, scheming against him here. So what happens is that when Mike tries to watch the evening news, he's immediately interrupted by Greg, who says, no, it's my turn. It's my turn to watch what I want. We already agreed to this. When we came up with that system of turns, you weren't included. And I know that rang true for me because when me and my brothers came up with the system of turns on what we can watch at what times, our mom wasn't included in that. So then I think Mike concedes the TV to Greg, but then he comes back saying, "Okay, maybe I'll watch the late news." But he's immediately interrupted by Marcia, Cindy, and Bobby, who want to watch cartoons. So this is how they're going to kind of manipulate their dad by denying him some TV time. Going to turn the page. So then, what happens is that Mike, there's one last newscast that Mike wants to watch, and he's going to do everything he can to make sure he watches that. So he's going to force the kids to go to sleep, and he's going to like just shoo them away so he can take the time to watch the news. But the thing is that Alice is watching her soap operas, and because of that, Mike can't watch the news now because it's not like Alice is an employee. But again, this is something that wouldn't happen. I remember one episode where they said that Alice did make the decisions on what to watch on TV. And turn the page. So anyway, it's the next morning. Mike realizes he's looking like Alfred E. Newman here. he looks frightening here. He tells the kids that we're gonna get that second TV, and that he's gonna go to the office, but he's gonna take care of the order over the phone. So when he's at work, he makes the calls. The TV store at that time, they sent it the same day. So this entire transaction was done over the phone in a couple hours. Mike comes home, he sees the second TV, but the situation hasn't changed because Alice has gotten Carol addicted to her soap operas, and the kids still want to watch what they want to watch. So Carol and Alice have control of one TV, and the kids have control of the other TVs, which means Mike has no TV time, and he just accepts that he's going to have to listen to the radio to hear the news. And that's the end of that story. Okay, the next story is Be Prepared. What's happening here is that the kids have various groups coming over to their home for a meeting. But the thing is, everything is happening at the Brady Bunch all at once. So this is something where Greg says, listen, my Boy Scout troop needs to be here. Marcia and Jan are saying, no, my Girl Scout troop needs to be here. Bobby has an indigenous people group here. So he's cosplaying as an American Indian here, which was not seen as offensive. Well, it was offensive to some people, but not to enough people. And Cindy has a birthday that day. So Carol's taken by surprise that all these events are happening on the same day at the Brady home. Going to turn the page. Carol is looking for help. She's calling for Mike. And the thing is, Mike, and this rang true, because Mike liked golfing. So he would golf with his golf buddies. And Carol is trying to reach the golf course so she can get Mike back here to help her out. So Carol's trying to organize all this that's going on. We see Bobby's group of cosplaying Indians here. We see Greg, he's getting in the way. And Carol's starting to panic here. She is trying to direct the groups to go to certain areas. So at least she's trying to keep them separate. Going to turn the page. Then Carol tries to restore order here. It looks like Bobby's group of indigenous people group, which includes adult males. I'm presuming, I'm hoping that it's father son, and not that these are kind of like men who aren't related to the other kids. That type of group. So it looks like the Bobby's group is going to go into the garage, and I think Carol wants the Girl Scouts to go to the girls' room, and the Girl Scouts, they want to make brownies. I'm not sure, not those type of brownies, and so they're kind of like they want to bake something. Gonna turn the page. Carol says, okay, just go to the girls' room and kind of give me a chance to get everything set up for that. So she doesn't tell the girls no, but she's saying kind of like trying to stall. Greg's Boy Scout troop, they're taking over the living room here, and they're doing their instructional things. But as Carol is focused on that, there's a knock at the door. Cindy's friends come in, because it's Cindy's birthday. And then she leads those kids to Cindy. And then, Carol presents the birthday cake. Cindy is being a little bitch. She is saying, "I'm the birthday girl. Be nice to me." So she kind of being a little bit of a dick here, to be honest. Gonna turn the page. Then the Boy Scouts, they're all bandaged up here. Carol's horrified. She's thinking that if these kids got hurt here, our home insurance won't be able to cover it. But it turns out that's not the case. The kids actually weren't injured. They were just practicing how to apply bandages. Carol realizes that, but then she notices smoke coming from the garage. And it turns out that Bobby's weird indigenous peoples group, they're practicing smoke signals indoors. Mind you, these are adult men who are making this decision. And Carol, she brings in a water hose from outside. Again, this is something she would never. You try to ruin her carpeting. Good luck there. Gonna turn the page. Then Carol gets back to Cindy's birthday party. The cake is gone. Carol's saying what happened to it. The kids claim they don't know, but they all have cake frosting on their mouths. So that's kind of the inside joke that they ate the cake, which is what you would expect the kids to do. Then Carol's cleaning up the kids here. Then there's loud music, and it turns out that when Marcia and Jan took the rest of the Girl Scouts to their room, they started playing records. And, they might have been, Davy Jones or Donovan, or Bobby Sherman, David Cassidy, the really good music that the Brady girls were listening to. Turn the page. So anyway, Carol, she breaks that up because she needs the Girl Scouts to do something different. She wants them to what exactly does she want them to do? So anyway, Carol then moved. I don't know what the hell's going on here. So anyway, there's some nonsense going on with the Girl Scouts. Gonna turn the page. Then all of the groups show up in the kitchen. This is overwhelming to Carol to kind of make sense of this chaos. But she does. And finally, the day is over for her. Like all the groups, they broke up and left. Carol is looking forward to a nice quiet evening with Mike, Mike shows up with his golf buddies and saying, "Hey, we want a party here." Carol, I don't know, was she thinking, is he talking gangbang here? She faints over this. Uh, the other guys, they kind of look a little bit disappointed. I can't blame them. Florence was a good-looking woman, but you don't want to do that. And then that's the end of that dreadful story. Can turn the page. So we got the last story, the runaways. Basically, the boys and the girls, they decide to run away. They do this independently of each other. So they both came up with the same ideas for basically the same reasons. And they're going to actually go out and do this at the same time. Going to turn the page. The boys decide that they're going to go west, so they pack their bags and they leave. They make sure they're not seen by their parents. The girls are doing the same things. They're just packing up their stuff and kind of leaving, and they don't want to be seen. Gonna turn the page. The boys, they hop on a city bus, believing that the bus will take them west. Greg, they're kind of playing it off like, we know where we're going, even though they're kind of not sure where they're going. So as the bus pulls out, the girls show up on the corner. So they just missed being on that same bus. The girls are having a conversation about what they should do. I think what the girls decided to do was that they were going to go to San Francisco and then New York. And that was how they were going to travel. And the driver is kind of being a little nosy here, because I guess he's used to kind of seeing runaways. And that kind of alerted him. Gonna turn the page. So anyway, we see an urban scene. And again, you never saw this on the Brady Bunch. The boys, they're in the bus. They're thinking about their new lives out west in Texas. Cindy's thinking about what type of job she can have, and she decides that she wants to be a stewardess, or we call them flight attendants now. But that was the term that was used back then. Cindy's thinking she could do that, maybe on Epstein Air, but wouldn't be a good idea to have her as one now. Gonna turn the page. So the boys, they arrive at the bus depot, and they're the first ones there. So that's where they're going to get a ticket to go to Texas. They ask the ticket agent. The ticket agent is familiar with what's going on here because they see lots of runaways. The ticket agent advises his supervisor, saying, "Look, I think we have another group of runaways." And the supervisor is also used to this, saying, "Okay, do they want to be, cowboys or astronauts?" So this is something that they're familiar with. Going to turn the page. So the girls show up at the bus depot, and they're also talking amongst them. The youngest ones, Cindy and Bobby, they were the most reluctant to kind of run away. And then the ticket agent recognizes the girls and what they're trying to do. And the girls, they want to go to San Francisco, New York. And the ticket agent is kind of like, okay, you kind of have to pick one or the other. It's not like they're close together. Marsha's saying, duh, we know that. We want to go to San Francisco first, and then we're going to go to New York. Because I think they had talked earlier where that's where groovy career girls go. So again, the ticket agent and the supervisor, they're talking. They're just figuring out, okay, we'll just stall them for a while, and eventually they'll get tired, and they'll get the message and they'll go home. Can turn the page. So anyway, the boys and the girls, they're waiting for the bus. They're waiting for the tickets. They don't see each other there, but it looks like the boys and the girls, independently of each other, they get the idea that maybe they should go home, that this wasn't a good idea. This is what the ticket seller and the supervisor, they were planning on this. They were used to this. And they felt they accomplished their mission by, in a very passive way, of stopping some kids of making a really bad decision. Going to turn the page. So then the boys and the girls, they notice each other. They realize that they did the same thing for the same reasons. So then they all go back together and they talk about, hey, we understand the mistake we made. So then later on, they talk to their parents about this. Carol is saying, listen, we like things the way they are. We're not going to take one set of children over the other. We want you all. When we got married, we kind of knew that wasn't hidden. Carol's saying, listen, if I knock out maybe another dozen Bradys, it will be fine. Mike's saying, no, we have enough kids. I'm not interested in knocking you up. And Mike is saying, I like the way the family is at this moment. And that's the end of that dreadful story. And there's a couple of Daisy BB gun ads here. Okay, so I'm going to talk about my impressions of the first half of the first season. Okay, so the first one is the pilot. This is the marriage of Mike and Carol. I can see why Robert Reed was down on this show. There was no tension whatsoever. It felt more like a blind date than an actual marriage. And when Robert Reed signed up to do the Brady Bunch, he thought it was going to be a serious drama, like his other TV show, The Defenders. And it wasn't until he saw the script after he had signed the contract on how bad it was. And he actually he did a press tour where he was bad-mouthing the show, saying that I was tricked. This show is garbage. Please ignore it so I can make another career decision that won't be this bad. And the show ended up being a huge success. He hated the show, although he loved being Mike Brady. But this episode was really bad. It was really lame. The only positive I would say is that when the wedding became a little bit of a disaster, they laughed about it because it was the marriage and not the wedding that meant the most to them. So anyway, I'm gonna go to I think the first official episode was Dear Libby. The kids they read an advice columnist regularly. I remember reading like Dear Ann, Dear Anders, Ask Meg, and the thing is, a situation that showed up in that letter matched the Brady Bunch. I married someone who had 3 kids. I had 3 kids. We're together. But now I regret that. And I'm having doubts about whether I want to, continue this marriage. And it means that one spouse might end up divorcing the other. The kids are kind of getting used to the current situation. They were fine with it, and then suddenly it might be torn away from them. And then it turned out to be just another person in another state, and the actual advice columnist showed up in the house to explain, listen, it didn't come from here. and the kids are all happy because their blended family will hold together. And the next one was one I liked a lot, was Eeny, Meeny, Mommy, Daddy. The whole episode is basically Cindy solves a problem. Cindy has a problem, and it's eating at her. It and she doesn't know how to solve it. And one of the things I liked about the episode was that how Cindy went about trying to solve the problem. And she would ask for advice, which is how you should do it. And she would ask Marcia what to do. Marcia actually applied some pop psychology, saying, "Oh no, you have to ask Dad. Mom will be okay with that." And then Cindy asked Greg what to do. Greg says, "No, you have to ask your mom. Ask Mom out. Dad will be fine with that." And Cindy, she didn't see any value in that advice. Then she went to Alice. Alice said, "Let's, put it to chance." But Cindy wasn't happy about that solution either. And she was having a hard time resolving it. Alice had to tell Mike and Carol what's going on, and they understand Cindy's angst. And then Mike sort of goes up and says, what if I couldn't make it, and it was something beyond my control? Would you be okay if I, couldn't show up? And Cindy kind of likes that message, saying that then the problem is solved from her end. Then I think at the end, it ended up, there was a performance, there was a second performance where only the Bradys and Alice were allowed to attend. So basically what happened was, I guess they had the original performance with all the families and their one parent, because the other kids and Cindy, they can only bring one parent. So the thing is that the kids' parents, they had to send their kids out again. And when they asked, "Hey, can we watch this second performance?" They were told no. We're only going to allow the Bradys and their housekeeper Alice to watch it. We'll reserve a seat for Tiger, but the rest of the parents, no, you're not allowed to come, but you have to bring your kid. So we can have the second version of the play. Those other parents must have been bitching in the parking lot. Next one is Alice doesn't live here anymore. The few things that came to mind was that it was sort of one of the few times where Mike and Alice had a employer-employee talk. And it was always, Alice was basically just another member of the family. Although she had to do certain things, like she did have to scrub that one toilet. And I'm sure sometimes Mike had to remind her, hey, they can be a little cleaner. You never really felt that Alice was an employee, but this is one of the few times where there was, that understanding. I think also there was another thing where the Greg and Peter were fighting over a baseball glove, but one is left-handed and the other's right-handed. And I think what happened was that Alice was too involved with what the boys' problems, and she's like, "Hey, go to your mom." The mom, Carol, she likes the fact that the boys are going to her rather than Alice first. That makes Carol feel more accepted. But then the girls feel marginalized because as their mom is paying more attention to the boys, the girls feel like it's less attention for them. And and then they ended up resolving it because Alice then wanted to quit the job. And she was really dedicated to this marriage. She was going to all types of lengths to kind of like get the kids to kind of more blend in more, and then the kids they schemed behind Alice's back, and then Alice got the message. Okay, I know I'm needed here, so I'm not going to leave. So yeah, that's what's going on with that episode. Then the other one is Kachu. That's when Jan is allergic to Tiger, but it wasn't Tiger. It was Tiger's flea powder. But the kids, they're working on various ways they can save Tiger, because they're kind of like, oh, if it goes down to Jan and Tiger, we know who we can get rid of. And they're vexed by Jan's reaction. And then eventually it comes out that they had changed Tiger's flea powder, and it was that flea powder that was what Jan was allergic to, so they didn't have to give away Tiger. One thing that stood out for me was that when the kids were resigned to the fact that Tiger was going to have to be rehomed to one of the grandparents, so Tiger wasn't going to be sent to the shelter. Tiger was just going to be sent to one of the grandparents, and then when Dad says, "Listen to the boys, listen, you don't blame Jan for this," and there's like these cold stares of silence. So that was sort of one thing that I noticed the Brady boys were really good at, when they wanted to be really cold, and yeah, they resolved that at the end. The next one is a clubhouse is not a home. It kind of feels like it's still in the honeymoon phase. The boys have a clubhouse and the girls don't, and there's a fight over it. Then the girls try to replicate what the boys are doing. They were doing an incompetent job, but Cindy was almost harmed there. Then the other guys, they realized that it's not a joke anymore, and they had to go out and show the girls how to do it. They did a great job, but then Bobby had to pilfer nails from their clubhouse to fix what was going on in the girls' clubhouse. The boys' clubhouse falls apart, and then the boys try to squat in the girls' clubhouse, and the fight is just starting all over again. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The next one is Kitty Carryall is missing. This one I thought was a little bit more fun. One was how petty Bobby and Cindy were. They were really petty with each other. Bobby, who's kind of doing like Little Rascals type acting, he doesn't help himself by being so angry and bitter at Cindy. And because of this, he's wrongly accused of stealing Cindy's favorite doll. And they're trying various ways to resolve the issue. There's a trial where I think Greg and Marcia are the judges. Peter and Jan are the jury, and Bobby and Cindy are the plaintiff and defendant. I think that was probably a call to Robert Reed, whose previous series he was a lawyer on the Defenders. And again, it was just funny how everything was just played out in that episode. So then there is A Camping Life Will Go. That was one that was shot offset. That was shot, I think, near the LA Reservoir. One of the things that I do remember, and it's something that was mentioned in the commentary, is how good looking the TV shows are, and how good the film stock was. And that probably played a role in why the show was so popular, because the colors were so vivid. There is one episode where there's a noticeable drop, and the quality of the color isn't that good. Um, they did have a joke about all of them needing to go to the bathroom with the crapper that they couldn't show um, on the on the set, because I think there were FCC regulations against showing a toilet at that time. The next one is Sorry Right Number. That's when it's another period of adjustment. Um, and this is where there's issues with the telephone, where there's a high usage of the telephone being used, and this is interrupting Mike's and his calls. So then what he does, he brings in a payphone into the residence, and that the other kids are going to have to use the payphone. So their usage will be metered depending on how much spare change they have. That was actually based on something that was real, from J. Paul Getty, and he was probably the richest man who alive when he was with us. But he was such a skinflint that he was the only resident in Los Angeles who could have a payphone in his home. So whenever he had guests and they needed to make a call, they had to use a payphone. And because he was so powerful and so politically connected, and that's kind of like a parody on that, I guess. Then we see another episode, Every Boy Does It Once. This is, period of adjustment. Bobby is kind of being influenced. He's being red-pilled into believing that his new stepmom is wicked because he had just seen Cinderella. Bobby, he kind of just talks himself into a situation where he feels like he has to run away to escape this abuse that isn't happening. Carol says, listen, if you're going to run away, I'm going to have to come with you so I can make sure you're being taken care of. And this is enough to satisfy Bobby into believing, okay, you're going to be my real mom, and you're not going to beat me up. Outside of that, the only thing I noticed was Peter, who's wearing these really high waters, like he was waiting for a flood. That I found that funny. I also think there was a hand-me-down scene where the Greg and Marcia they get to buy new clothing, and Peter and Jan, they have to take Marcia and Greg's hand-me-downs, and there's a fight over that, which I thought was kind of funny. Next episode is Vote for Brady. This is when Greg and Marcia are running for student body president. One of the things I liked about this episode was that it pointed to how important resources are, because it turns out that both of them have some resources, and it's how they're allocated. Greg wants to make phone calls to students to persuade them to vote for Greg. Marcia wants to focus on making signs and plastering them around the school as a way to garner votes for her. And I thought this distinction was kind of interesting. It turns out the race is very close. One of Greg's campaign aides, I should say, says that we should spread a nasty rumor about Marcia, and that would discredit her in front of the rest of the students. Greg is offended by this. That's his sister, and Marcia is seeing this, but she's kind of like hiding behind a bush. Then it turns out that when it's time for the election, Marcia says, listen, I concede this race and vote for my older brother. and she's saying, well, I'll run again next year. So and it's kind of fitting with the times. I think there was a bit of sexism. I do remember a later episode where Marcia completely rejects her mom's help in math because it's math. And then what's going on after that is the voice of Christmas. That I remember seeing that a few times. It was one of the few times where you kind of got to see that the Bradys were a religious family, and there was a little bit of status, in the church, because the whole thing was that mom was going to sing in front of the choir, and the thing is, I think she contracted tonsillitis or laryngitis, and she and it puts her performance at doubt whether she can sing. So the thing is, she's trying to take care of that, so she'll be in good shape to sing, at Christmas Mass. Cindy, Mike takes Cindy to a department store. There's a department store Santa. Dirty drunken Santa who has little kids jumping on his lap, has Cindy on his lap, and Cindy's saying, my wish is, my present is, can you make my mom feel okay so she could sing Sunday? And the store Santa is like, kid, what the hell, but he can't turn her down. So he says, yeah, I'll make that promise. No way to enforce it, so. But the thing is, Mike hears about this. He confronts the Santa in the locker room. Apparently, this department store is large enough where they have like an employee locker room. And I guess this is where clothing is kind of exchanged and taken off. That might have been Sherwood Schwartz trolling Robert Reed a little bit, because the two guys in the locker room. So I thought that maybe that was a little bit telling, because there was a lot of tension between Schwartz and Reed. And then the last one, I think, is there a doctor in the house? And then the kids, the split family, there's a decision to make on which doctor to keep, because when they got married, the girls were seeing one doctor and the boys were seeing another. And then it turns out that both doctors showed up in the home. And clearly they got messages saying that, listen, treat my kids, but then treat the other kids. So there's kind of like this misunderstanding. It was true to life when the male doctor went into the girl's room, and Jan was there in bed, and she starts screaming, because you kind of know what she's thinking. And then there's the scene with Peter and the female doctor. And that was played by Marion Ross, who was like, Mrs. Cunningham on Happy Days. And then, Peter's kind of freaking out over this female doctor who wants to touch him. At Peter's age, I'd probably be okay with that. But this is freaking Peter out. And then the two groups, they have to make a decision on what doctor to keep. And then they come to the logical conclusion that, we'll keep them both, because they make house calls, both of them. And it just depends on the situation. I think they did a checklist on who had what. And I want to talk about the measles, how lightly they took it. But think Greg and Peter had the mumps and the scarlet fever. Jan had the chicken pox. Marcia and Jan had mumps. Yeah, and one of the things that makes this episode infamous was how lightly they treated the measles. And it was treated like not a problem. Some of the cast members have spoken out against that. Like Maureen McCormick said she had the measles, and that it wasn't an easy experience for her. And she hated how anti-vaxxers would take that out of context from that episode. And so that was why that was a terrible episode. It also mentions that Mike did talk about sex to boys, and presumably that Carol's going to explain that to the girls. So that's the first half of the first season. When I reviewed the second issue of this title, I'll talk about the last half of that season. And that's it. And that is my review of the Brady Bunch issue number 1, and I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.